good morning from TechCentral and really welcome to our Science of Cybersecurity webinar. Thank you all for joining us today as we discuss why you really need to protect your cyberspace like you protect your health. I'm now going to hand over to Daniel Robus, our host and moderator for today's session.
Good morning and thank you for joining us to all our attendees and to our panel. In preparation for this, we've had a few sessions talking around the maturation of this topic. And I did a search this morning. What are the big concerns in cybersecurity for 2021? And 65 million results came back in less than a second. And one of the reports is coming back, 61% of companies have been affected by ransomware in the last year. And approximately $1 trillion is siphoned off the formal economy from cybersecurity threats, losses, data breaches, and the list goes on. So clearly this is an area of concern, and a big daddy like Liquid is definitely going to get involved in this. So today we are joined by Dion. You can see him in the top right of my screen. Dion Geyser is the CEO. Dion, you've got a strong track record of performance management through teams and getting work done through your teams. I'm going to come to you in a moment. We are joined by Boyd, who's the Chief Business Officer. I'm really interested in that title. You've also walked a long road in IT, successfully managing big development teams to success as well. And then Craig, who is a doctor, is there for any of our medical concerns. But your doctorate was actually in IT, and I'm going to be asking you a little bit around that. Expanding and uplifting South Africa is a passion of yours through Liquid's products for education, health, and job creation. We really are privileged to have your team here, Dion. And I just want to understand what is going on with Liquid, name changes, new market strategies, and now security division. Where are you taking this ship?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and thank you for a relevant question. You know, Daniel, I joined the team in the start of the year in January as CEO for South Africa, and I would like to maybe start off first with who we are as Liquid. You know, I realized as I came on board, many people don't understand and know Liquid for who we really are. In South Africa specifically, you know, the South Africa market remembers Liquid as the ex-Neotel company of the acquisition back in 2016-17. We are a Pan-African service provider. We have operations in more than 15 countries. And, you know, as part of that infrastructure layer, we have quite a big set of infrastructure assets, which we have and own across the group, namely 100,000 kilometers of fiber assets, large data centers across the continent, operations. We offer various sets of service provider products. But to answer your question that you posed, I mean, we started a transformation journey last year at the heart of the pandemic, which was aimed at taking Liquid Telecoms and adding on top of that a form of a SI integration layer, which is adding on top of our connectivity and data center and various products, also the capabilities of cloud services, cybersecurity, as you mentioned, and the discussion of today, unified communications, and of course also managed services. So what we've done since the middle of last year is we've taken the company through a major transformation from capability set, investment into product sets, and realigning our strategy not only in South Africa, but across the group to be able to offer these products and services across the 15 countries and heavily investing into what we see as growth. Of course, we did the brand transformation also in April of this year. And that was not only a new logo and a new paint on the outside, it was really a culmination of all the transformation initiatives that we've been running inside the business, you know, to put out Liquid Intelligent Technologies instead of Liquid Telecoms. And that's really just the outcome of the work that we've done prior to that. Thank you.
That rebranding is going well. Boyd, my question to you is security now. What's prompted you to dive into security as you have now and what we're launching, what we're seeing the launch of?
Thanks, Daniel. So we've always had a product focus in the security segment, but most certainly as we've seen the global pandemic hit businesses, it's caused businesses to rapidly escalate their digital migration strategies. A lot of digital migration strategies, I guess, have always been at the forefront of CTO, CEO, and CIO's minds, but they're always cautious around how one moves into a digital migration plan. And unfortunately, the pandemic, well, fortunately for business, unfortunately from a humanitarian perspective, the pandemic has forced businesses to rapidly accelerate this digitalization. And for us, we needed to, as Liquid, move our discussions with our enterprise customers, our SME customers, from a product discussion into how do we provide you with an end-to-end value proposition as an organization. And that really meant then that the security segment went from a product discussion to really an end-to-end managed service. And Dion touched on it a little earlier, is that really importantly for us is that we build on the connectivity business that we have, and we provide our businesses with an end-to-end managed service. I'll touch on that a little bit later, but I think for me really important is this transition from product into an end-to-end managed service for our customers.
Awesome. So you are talking around giving almost a business in a box solution to a customer where they can open the doors and operate, and you will look after everything else. How's that going down? And what does your title mean? If I look at Chief Business Officer, I thought we were all in business. Now you're the big
we are.
Okay.
Absolutely. Dion and I chatted about this the other day. So I look after the enterprise business for Liquid Intelligent Technologies. So really it's Chief Enterprise Business Officer, and really focusing on our enterprise business as we know it from a definition perspective, but also making certain that we put ourselves at the forefront of the SME segment. As we know, that SME segment is a material segment to the economy of South Africa, that SME segment is material to our business, and arguably bigger than the enterprise space when one looks at the GDP contribution to that. So really importantly for us, when we looked at how we create managed services in this new digital world, one of the things we needed to consider was that an SME leader, an SME business doesn't have the resources, the CapEx and the OpEx to fundamentally behave like a large enterprise where you go through long RFPs, you contract with multiple vendors, you hand select them based on different opportunities. So for us, what we needed to do was to transform this Liquid organization into providing not just enterprise, but very importantly, the SME business with this end-to-end managed service. So we would provide connectivity, we would provide digital migration support and strategies, we would provide security-based products and solutions, and then make sure that we manage the service. And I think if I take a step back and I park Liquid as an organization, I look at the market, I think what's really important is that you're an SME business, you don't want to be caught up with dealing with a LAN vendor, a WAN vendor, a hardware vendor, a digital migration vendor, a co-location vendor, etc. You really are looking for organizations that are, one, best of breed, two, have a track record, but three, can actually manage your business for you while you focus on what's important, and that's generating revenue and selling your product. And for us, it's really important that every time we bring product and solutions to the market, we create this managed services wrap around it, because we know intimately that an SME business in particular doesn't have those resources. And then from an enterprise perspective, we offer the same, but as we know, enterprises have large conglomerates of support services that sit there. So that was really important for us. And I think any SME that makes any decisions in how they interact with the system integrated ICT world must consider the managed services wrap that goes around these services.
Awesome. Thanks, Boyd. Craig, if we get into your role as COO and expanding this Liquid into a new area and embracing security as one of your top areas and growth areas, were you reticent in any way? Did you see any stumbling blocks that would have taken you away from your core focus that Liquid had been on for the last 5 years? Or were you in boots and all supporting this?
Just to round your question off, I think when you look at Liquid in totality, Liquid's actually been in security business for quite a long time across various areas of business sector and mostly within its hosting environment. So if I look at hosting today, I mean, security plays a fundamental part of ensuring that your customer data is safe. And secondly, if you look at the other big area of connectivity within the Liquid stable, most of your threats and attacks, albeit through ransomware or whatever other mechanism, really comes through connectivity. Okay. And it's part of, what we're in for. I mean, if you look at Liquid itself and the way we've been segmented as a business, it's really to look at specific industries. And in those industries, you really want to make a niche so that we are actually at the forefront of solving real customer business problems. And if I look at Liquid in its entirety, I mean, it focuses really on the key areas where the attacks are coming from a security perspective. It's in mining, it's in government, it's in the energy sector. And what you find out is that even some of the largest customers in the world we are hosting, if not only in South Africa. And our focus is really to make sure that from an industry perspective, you depart different kinds of security mechanisms that's to the benefit of an industry. So an example would be, if I look at in government, let's say transport business, pipeline business that we may be responsible for connectivity, one of the biggest problems you have there is that you can control your own environment, but you can't control the environment of your vendors. And what that means is that there's a fundamental flaw in how you would manage your security environment, and particularly in the energy sector. I mean, in the energy sector, if you look at Liquid, I mean, we wash probably internet traffic for the largest energy producers on the continent. And if you look at it, it's quite a responsibility because a lot of vendors are associated with that. And, if you look at Liquid going forward, I think at the forefront of security in terms of the process in the operations, it's really looking broad at security and also adopting very good cybersecurity maturity models. And those models extend to suppliers and vendors of customers. And it's really being able to get businesses to be honest about how they adopt best practices. And I think that's where we play a fundamental role within an industry, not only for a specific customer going forward. So, I think we're looking at building unified standards going forward. And just lastly, from our side, you spoke about ransomware attacks. Our customers, because of the value of their spend, I think ransomware targets would particularly be focused on our customer. And more so if you look at the government sector, where we're looking at health, we're connecting hospitals, we're connecting schools. So there's a huge responsibility for us to ensure that we bring security into the industry of the customer segments that we focus on. And in order to do that, we need to look broad and we need to look wide. So there's, a lot of hows that we've implemented in that environment. I can go into some of it, but I mean,
well, I've got a question that Donovan has actually put into words, my thinking, and Dion, it might be for you and Craig. But when you spoke earlier about, Dion, how you deal with enterprise customers and the SME model, and Donovan is coming in from an SME question where security has traditionally been an afterthought, partly due to the perception that SMEs aren't traditional targets for cyber criminals. That's been smashed out of the park with a number of things we've seen in the paper. The first point about being a target has changed in the last decade, but the resource constraint problem hasn't. And in some cases, it's more prevalent now that businesses are being forced to be more agile. How does Liquid propose to meet the SME sector working on smaller budgets with limited resources? Or is, Dion, your primary business focus large enterprise type solutions?
Very interesting question, right? Maybe I'll use a question first to talk about what do we do as Liquid and then talk back to what do we do in that specific segment, if that's okay.
Great.
So when we went down the strategy of defining our cybersecurity product strategy, if I can put it that way, we've really applied on top of that product definition and product strategy what we as a business do from an information security management service perspective, right? And what we've identified, to the points that Craig and Boyd mentioned, across our 5 key segments, we've realized that from our perspective, we had to put in, from a capability perspective, the ability to be able to provide consulting services to small, medium, and large enterprises, because the security capability in different businesses are different. the questions I receive is, hey, but can you help me with a various set of questions, as an example, right? So we've actually tailor-made a consulting arm around what we do with cybersecurity. Number two, we also have technology solutions that we offer into the market, and many of them aren't only, let's say, large bespoke security products that certain of our customers want for DDoS attacks or ransomware attacks or whatever the case may be. Some of them are inherent in the cloud services that we offer. For example, many of the SMEs in the SME segment, many of the guys are moving towards cloud services when they think about their Microsoft 365 applications. And there's inherent inbuilt security applications in there, which actually many of our customers don't really know about, right? So on the one hand, we've done consulting. We've done a product portfolio specifically for bespoke solutions as well as for cloud services-based solutions. The third aspect to what Boyd mentioned is we've wrapped that around with a managed service capability that we can operate and run that for customers. And lastly is we are investing into a security operations center, meaning that we can actually run that security off-prem for a number of customers. And actually by doing that, share that central cost actually with a large base of customers.
So for an SME, they can still approach Liquid. There is a space for them. And yes, what you're doing is you've done the heavy lifting from a consulting perspective to build something which is all-encompassing, which is, if I think about a home for your business, you've built an estate with walls and security and a home ready for the business to move into. Is that an analogy you would say is right, Craig?
Yes, that is correct. I mean, also, when you look at any security provisioning services, a lot of them is also horizontally integrated with other companies to assist you in building the capability to do so. And I think that's where we focused on in terms of taking the best of brand. And I think Dion touched on it as well. Just to answer the other part of your question that you asked, he mentioned that a lot of who we bring in or backward integrate into our business fundamentally has an inherent security capability that can look after your SMMEs. And a lot of them are offered through the cloud type services that we bring to customers, particularly in Boyd space, in the enterprise space, but also within government and also within the wholesale sector space or reseller space. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Dion, you wanted to add something there.
I just wanted to say that the security piece is actually very interesting. We, for example, launched recently and relaunched our working from home product, which is pretty much where we support our enterprise customers and customers to take their workforce home, which doesn't only include the connectivity layer with fiber or whatever the case may be, also adding on top of that security capability. Because to the point, right, there is many inherent inbuilt security capabilities that cloud services offer, which many people don't really fully understand. But on top of that, you can also add for additional measures, bespoke security applications, whether that be with SD-WAN or, DDoS, relevant equipment, whatever the case may be. I think importantly, as I mentioned, is we've really tailor-made our portfolio set to actually address those security concerns. And the piece which I wanted to interject is actually for the SME and medium enterprise market. We've recently ran a campaign where we're doing free security assessments. So for the guys that's in that segment, please reach out to us. Very happy to pick that up and also, add you guys to the program. And we've really done that on purpose to actually showcase our capability, bring our capability to the market and support our customer base with that.
Anything for free is good. That's fantastic. I'm a podcast host, man. I don't make money. Give me free stuff. That's fantastic. Boyd, this is kind of in Ignis's area, but could be yours. What is the most common problem that you're seeing clients are trying to solve, and how does security fit into this?
There's two things for me. One is that, as I said earlier on, this rapid evolution of digitalization has had a fundamental shift in the operating model of businesses. And Dion touched on it. Is for me, a typical business had a head office, it had a branch, they were clearly well defined. You had your LAN and your WAN, you understood it, and that was easy to manage. What's happened is the digital migration has broken those walls down completely. So the virtual perimeter that you have within a physical geography as a CIO or a CTO is now gone. The controls that you had in place to protect your network and your people. Because bearing in mind, when you look at the threats that are hitting companies today, some of them are technology driven, but a large percentage and a majority is about people. People being trained, people giving access to the network via malware, phishing, etc. Park things like DDoS just for now. It's about people. So one of the critical problems to solve is when you start moving people out of your virtual perimeter, how do you manage your network, your data, and your information, but still allowing your people to be highly productive so that you don't have to go through 10 different sign-ons and go through this VPN and that VPN, and then hope that when you see an email that it's gone through the necessary protocols. So one of the things that we do is we work with our partners and we provide what we call CSATs, which are cybersecurity assessments. And really those are important, not just to guide businesses around the technology, but actually having processes and systems and training in place to help businesses navigate through the cybersecurity threats.
You're talking about we needed to work from anywhere, and that was a panic for the first 6 months of COVID and maybe 8 months. And now we've matured into work from anywhere securely. And almost the maturation of that from a liquid is work from anywhere securely without worrying about it. Is that the dream?
Correct. And that's why we don't talk about work from home. We talk about this remote worker, this work from anywhere road warrior. And what you're seeing large institutions that typically sit on significant data, particularly in the financial services environment, that are being very public about how they are migrating workforces out of the office for whatever the reason may be. So for us, it's saying, how do we work with you creating an ISO compliant strategy, but not just about delivering of the product and the solution, Daniel. I think that is a manifestation of the consulting work that we would provide. So the frameworks that we would provide to our customers allow them to look at their overall threat assessment holistically. The last problem that people are now having to solve is POPIA. I think everyone on this panel and everyone around has received 3,592 million emails on POPIA and compliance, but it's a real thing. No longer is security around protecting your data. It's actually now protecting other people's data, and it has legal consequences. So those are the two things that I believe business has to solve. One is a compliance piece, and the other is really navigating through this new world.
Awesome. I like that summary. It's a good segue into a question we got in the chat, which you probably haven't seen. But Preshell asked, is your SOC already built?
I'll take that question, Daniel, if that's okay.
We're not going to tell you where it is geographically, Preshell, because then you'll blow it up. We can't do that. Okay, go.
So transparently, Daniel, in order for us to scale to market very quickly, we've actually, in a number of our areas, created strategic partnerships and joint investments. Okay. And one of these areas is around our SOC. So we've partnered with a world-class international partner, which has a security operations center based in South Africa. And of course, we are looking at strengthening that also over time as the requirements of that develop. Okay. So happy to also share with Preshell more information around that. And if you want to go and have a visit, even take you there. Happy to also do that. I wanted to add one comment also to the previous question that you posed to Boyd, which is around, what's the biggest threat? And, what we've seen in our business, specifically our own business, is actually around the people aspect. Where people are with all this remote working, people come to work and they set in their specific ways, right? Now you suddenly move to people home and you actually have to find ways to manage your processes. And sometimes you actually deviate from the processes that was set that needed to protect you. And not only yourselves, but your partners as well. Because remember, on the outside, your partners potentially can get hacked and, did not adhere to their protocols, which runs a risk for yourself. So the people aspect still, I believe, is probably one of the biggest risks outside of of course, the technology piece and these type of things. So critical, actually, that during the assessments in your ISO framework, you actually address that, which is a big part of what we look at.
Well, Preshell was specifically not looking for the geography to go and visit you guys, just if it's in South Africa from a data sovereignty, or have you met it in other ways? So maybe you want to give that a definite.
It's the same as if you look at South Africa, right? We have 3 large data centers in the country, right? Okay. And we felt for South Africa, we really needed to have the ability to offer those services in country from a security operations center perspective. And of course, we're also looking at with our other countries to also expand, how we address that, which requires data sovereignty, and how do we address that for the specific market. Similar to how we address some of the data sovereignty questions across data center pieces and. So very relevant.
Brilliant. Okay. I think this question could be for Craig or Boyd, but what would change with somebody coming to work with Liquid Security? What would change in the way they operate? What do you bring to the table, Craig?
So there's a number of things that we bring to the table, and some of them I spoke about earlier in terms of being aware of very specific segmentation market attacks, albeit from a ransomware perspective. But I think there's a number of things that we also focus on, and some of them are very important because they are access points. So, it's really looking at the access area to the network. If you look at it today, a lot of customers have a lot of touch points into their network, like IoT, etc. And all of those are vulnerable points into the network. And some of them even via wireless. So what we bring is also de-authentication on attack from, unsecured wireless networks, as an example. What we also do and offer as part of our offering may not be unique in one area of security, but crosses over a number of areas. That's, wireless penetration tests, and then also the alignment and the understanding of an example like NIST, incident reporting compliance, as well as performing successful network security vulnerable assessments for specific segment clients. And examples of that, just looking in the energy sector as an example, so many vendors associated with it, particularly where we're focusing on DDoS security. I don't want to mention the name of the vendor, but it's the biggest energy supplier in Africa. And basically, it's being very specific to that sector and understanding how other parts of the demand value chain fits together and where vulnerable points can be developed within a specific value chain. Because you'll see going forward, most of the attacks is really as a result of hackers taking advantage of so many diverse points in their value chain.
Thank you. Boyd, you wanted to add something here.
Thanks, Daniel. I think to add to that, and Dion touched it right in the very beginning, one of the important things for us is ensuring that we utilize the footprint that we have across Africa and expanding. And I think for large organizations, one of the problems that people want to solve is understanding how the remote worker works beyond the borders of South Africa. Pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic, the notion of no borders from a corporate and an enterprise perspective is really important. So leveraging a Pan-African footprint, a lot of our African businesses talk to us about what can we do in footprints where we have a common set of network services, security services. So one of the key things for me is about providing an enterprise or an SME a footprint-based service that spans beyond the border of South Africa and is uniform. And for me, that is a critical element of any decision that an enterprise needs to make around where they place their business. And then as you add the multitude of cloud-based services, connectivity services, and managed services on top of that, again, as a CIO, you want to know that when you have people that are exposed to the continent, they're well protected under your corporate network.
I think that this leads into a question we've just got from Dion. And it's kind of, how do you fast track this for your customers? What are the frameworks we had put in place? And not to steal his words, but Dion says within his environment, there's a lack of an ICT security governance and within our enterprise architecture capability. Can you provide pointers to direct our approach to enhance security in the context of enterprise architecture? Dion, apart from phoning Liquid and getting one of their architects there, which would be a fast track, I'm going to let Dion have a first go and see where he comes to, and then pass it to the panel after that.
Look, I think it's a very familiar question. The reason why I'm smiling is we've recently, when I came on board, I challenged our team to get me in front of 100 of our key customers. And to be quite frank with you, it was actually for me quite interesting to see how many of our customers, actually specifically the medium enterprise, and small medium enterprise segment. The large customers like the banks and really large retailers, etc. I do believe that they have a fair understanding of the related security risks and have put a huge amount of effort in addressing many of those risks. But we do see in this medium/small medium enterprise segment, you typically have a business where it's very much CEO, CFO driven, and they're not technologists and they don't understand these risks. And therefore they've not put, I almost want to say, the right amount of thinking and understanding of risk and how to address that over time into their business operationally. And then suddenly they found themselves being hacked and having lost quite a number of millions of rands of either operational time or operational capability, or worse than that, they had to, in some instances, even pay some ransom fines to get out of a situation. And to your point, so the reason we actually started with the consulting piece is actually that we can support our customers with addressing those gaps in their system and portfolio. We built an approach which is based around ISO and state-of-the-art information security management system frameworks. And we're very happy to engage with our customers about how we can actually support them, from that perspective with regards to process policy, but then also then leading into technology and the transformation required in their business. They already, I almost want to say, big wins if by purely looking at those assessments and understanding how you can operate with what you have to make yourself safer. And
so it's not a rip and replace that
Liquid's not at all.
Talking about. We put a stake in the ground by doing this free assessment that will let you know where we are. We get a risk profile for you, and then we work on the weak areas to strengthen them to bring them up. 100%. Okay, cool. I want to just take a minute to introduce Ignas de Villiers. Ignas, who is heading up the security area for your team, Group Head of Cybersecurity. You're new in the LIT team, but certainly not to security. You've been there since I was in Standard 6. That's a long time to be secure. Ignas, thanks for joining us. I'd like to welcome you, and I'm going to put you in the hot seat before asking Elizabeth and Martin's questions, asking you, if you considering a security framework, what are the 3 critical components of a security framework in your mind?
Our approach in terms of having a security framework, and also that we recommend to our clients, is to always have an information security management system. We don't prescribe what customers should utilize, but it's very, very important to have an information security management system. And that's the first pillar of that framework, is to have that. And that should typically address governance, risk, compliance, people, process, and technology. So it's not only about people, process, and technology, but also governance, risk, and compliance related to information security. And then a second pillar thereof is to have a security resilience control framework that's in support of that ISMS. And there again, very important to select a framework that's suitable for your organization and your organization's footprint and the services that you deliver. As examples, there are the NIST cybersecurity framework, the CIS top 20 frameworks, and then in the banking industry, you get frameworks like the IOSCO framework that can be considered. What's important here is to consider your own landscape and then select a resilience framework that sort of support your business. There can also be specific industry requirements like PCI, DSS, and if that's applicable to your organization, then important to add that to that framework. And then importantly is it's not a once-off exercise, it's continuous. So the third pillar would be to always make sure that it's a continuous improvement exercise, to assess and to improve on a continuous basis and in a cycle.
Because as you said in the prep session, the bad guys are continuously improving. We have to keep fit. It's like going to gym. You don't go once, you have to go every day. I love that, Ignas. Elizabeth has asked a question a while ago. How do we protect sensitive information handled and stored by third-party vendors?
Obviously, the moment that you share information outside your information, it's important to have a relationship and an understanding and an agreement from a governance perspective as to what you want to share. But once there's agreement between you and a third party and the information that you share is confidential, that you then share it utilizing a mechanism that enables enables the protection of that information. A good example there would be, for instance, digital rights management, where the information is protected and can only be read by somebody that was a recipient of that information and that was addressed by the owner that created that information. That would be an example of a mechanism that would enable the sharing of information between yourself and third parties.
Excellent. Thanks, Ignas. We've got another question from Martin Schroeder, which is continuing on the SME line. And I think I'm going to speak to Craig about this. What he's saying, as an SME in the remote part of South Africa, the cost of data is extremely high, which causes the company to utilize costs to getting infrastructure erected and maintained. What will be incorporated to help smaller businesses cost-wise to have protection against cyber attacks, et cetera, It's crucial that we get included in Liquid's strategy for this, but in a way that we can afford. I don't know if that's you, Craig, but I'm picking on you anyway, and then maybe Dion can add into it.
Small to medium enterprise is within Boyd's area, but I will give an interlude into that from an answer perspective. I think one of the biggest challenges that most companies have when it comes to security is that there are so many components in this thing called a network that has an impact and influence on how you can be targeted from a security perspective. When it comes to small, medium enterprise, it's statistically been spoken about over the years that, hackers would mostly target bigger type companies because they can implement ransomware and basically hold people ransom, that's what it means, and have control over their network. And to a larger extent, what's happening now is that backdoor is actually being found out through SMMEs, actually to the larger organizations. And just from a network perspective, when you ask about it, a lot of control over the logical flow of data within the network is not something that you look at in particular to say that I'm looking for a type of security breach, because a lot of that is owned individually within the logical layer of the SMME or whoever manages their network or on behalf of their network. And what we as a company do is when we come into any managed services type of environment and we're looking at things holistically, security will become a feature and focus area. And as we start building out the security suite, it will eventually over time be extended to those kinds of areas. In our own network, of course, a lot of time, money, value, and effort is going into ensuring that we maintain security over our own assets. But then again, a lot of work needs to be done on the logical layer for individual customers.
So if I summarize that, in my understanding, what he was asking was, it's expensive to have security now in outlying areas. Liquid's going to bake this into the offerings to make it as inclusive as possible. If you choose to stable with Liquid, you're getting security baked in. There are specialized security areas you may have to go and engage for on a consulting level, but by and large, your solutions are going to have security as part of the core understanding and deployment of these solutions. Is that right, Boyd?
Yeah, I think to Martin's question very specifically, the two key elements to focus on. One is the connectivity layer, particularly in outlying areas, rural South Africa. And I think there was a particular point there. A lot of SMEs are not in the metros. And our strategy, we've obviously got an extensive fiber network across the country, but also we are last mile agnostic in the context of how we provide connectivity to the user. So whether it be satellite connectivity, microwave connectivity, and other types of terrestrial and fiber connectivity, we make sure that when we're talking to our customers, one is we provide them an end-to-end service where you don't have to go and look at getting services from multiple providers. I think that's the first piece. And part of that is an aggressive cost management structure for ourselves as a historically, primarily a connectivity business. And I think that's the one piece. The second piece is not just about the security. You know, when you go and you create a non-aggregated buying behavior and you buy your laptop from supplier X, you buy your Wi-Fi from supplier Y, you go and procure your UPS from supplier Z, you are paying the retail cost or a cost price on an individual environment, then the approach that we take, particularly in the SME space, is we look at a TCO model. So what is the total cost of ownership for a particular business? And how do we ensure that we create a sustainable, cost-effective solution for the business? So when you aggregate all the sum of the parts, not just the security element, to Martin's question, you then start looking at a total cost model. And that's something that we've delivered to our customers now, as opposed to buying product. We're not a product house.
Awesome. I love that. Guys, we've got 13 minutes. And as you know, I ask 3 specific questions towards the end of the session. So the first question is for Ignis. What are you most excited about from a release perspective of your security team over the next 6 months? And then Dion, what is your team's focus for the next quarter? And then Craig and Boyd, for attendees who are not your customers, what is your advice to them regarding security and going forward with security?
So from my side, certainly the increase of managed security services delivered by our team. At the moment, we are delivering some managed security services to a number of customers, and we want to expand on that, broaden the scope of managed security services that we deliver, and then at the same time, and specifically delivering some niche solutions that's more at the forefront. We're very good at delivering legacy solutions, but also to address more recent type of requirements. And typical examples there are zero trust solutions based on SASE, secure access, service edge solutions, and those type of solutions into the market in comparison to what we did in the past, which is more legacy related solutions, firewalls, VPNs, and all of that. So certainly that's going to be a big focus. And then given the requirement for all organizations to comply with POPIA, there's also going to be a big focus on making sure that we assist companies from a consulting perspective and in the data privacy space. So that would be a few examples.
Brilliant. It sounds like you're going to be a busy team. That's fantastic. Dion, from an LRT perspective over the next quarter, what's your focus? What are your guys working hard on as an enterprise level?
We've paved the way with this lit transformation on quite a broad-based transformation program that we're setting ourselves, and hairy, audacious goals, and we're actually executing exceptionally well as a management team on that. Specifically related to the cybersecurity piece, what is critical for us in the coming 3 months is really to, number one, be a lot more visible from a market perspective and through our engagement with our customers. And that's why we've gone with the approach of looking at, doing several assessments and increasing our engagement across our customer base around that. One is for a reason to also put our portfolio out there, but also to resonate with them. Are we hitting the mark? I like direct customer feedback. That's why I like direct customer meetings to know, hey, are we addressing your need, or is there something that we should potentially add to that while we're in product definition phase? Okay. So number one is visibility and engagement. Number two is we're doing a lot of recruitment still, from an organizational perspective to strengthen across the organization, but specifically also around our cybersecurity team. We have a significant increase in terms of requests of engagement, and both from a solutioning, productization, and execution perspective, we are ramping up that organization as well as our cloud services team. We're making a big investment into that space as well. And then thirdly, it's about picking up. We have a couple of wins that we've racked up the last couple of months. It's about executing those well, and not only making sure that we deliver them well, but that we actually operationalize them quite well. So those for me at the big picture is really the big picture items. And I think lastly, Daniel, to take a company like Liquid from where it's been as a telecoms provider to a technology company requires a large shift in culture and thinking. And one of the key things we also spending a lot of effort on internally in the business, and we will be doing so also in the next quarter, is, just embedding our new culture that we've just established and putting that into operational mode throughout our business. So while we're doing the product stuff, we're doing the selling stuff, we're doing the delivery pieces, it's also inculcating, a new culture that's required for a tech company that will help us with our thinking, the way we behave, the way we react in the market, and the way we play.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to move down to Craig and Boyd. I'm going to start with the doctors first. Craig, what do you have as advice to a customer out there who's concerned about security moving forward?
One of the first things that I want to bring across is that compliance is not going to mitigate against all of the security challenges. So there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of good security hygiene. And normally a lot of that is about effectively checking the vulnerability within your organization. That could be through patch management. And it's got to be done in a cost-effective way, and also ensure that there's some sort of standardization around the patch management program. And in essence, that's the scanning, the prioritization, the testing, the deploying, the rescanning needs to be done responsibly going forward. And then for me, it's very important that customers are aware of vulnerable points extended beyond their own data points, which could be with vendors, could be with suppliers, and also understand the NIST compliance requirements going forward, because it's very sector specific. So that's the advice I would give, Daniel.
Excellent. Or else it could get NASTY when you find that your data is being sold in the common market. Okay, I like that. Boyd, from an enterprise side and an enterprise focus, what advice would you have for non-LIT customers?
So security and the landscape has become very topical, and organizations will look very quickly to mitigate the risk and the threats. And I think that's the prudent approach. However, I want to underpin it with a degree of prudence. We're seeing a lot of organizations aggregate services. In other words, instead of having 10 different vendors, whether it be in terms of hardware, your LAN, your WAN, your cloud-based services, and your managed services, we're seeing enterprise and SME looking to aggregate services for many different reasons. It's either cost, it's either the trusted advisor relationship. So one of the big piece of advice I could give business is to look at the depth and breadth of services that organizations, particularly in the telco and the IT space, can deliver. Because it is easier for you to manage. You're going to find that the aggregation of these services allow you to be a lot more agile. Yes, there are risks associated with aggregation into a single supplier, and sometimes we'll go with one or two suppliers when it comes to managing services. But we're seeing that as a trend. And I think that particularly in the SME and in the enterprise space is select wisely and look at that breadth and depth of services, not just today, but is the organization innovating tomorrow around not just product, but making certain that you're on this journey, whether it be a 3 or a 4 or a 5 year journey with a system integrator or a technology firm. So look at the aggregation, look at the breadth and depth, and try to minimize your exposure by creating a multi-vendor strategy.
Awesome. There is a question that's come through, which I think is typewritten for Ignis, and it comes from Vakudo, who says, how does Liquid do security framework comparison to its clients? And then the second bit is, how does Liquid establish a security posture of an organization and then maintain it? Ignis, you've got a minute and a half. You go.
Okay, yeah. So certainly, I think the important thing is typically when you need to assist a company in improving its posture, it starts by doing an assessment. And typically, we have a 3-phase methodology. The first phase being a reconnaissance phase, where we understand the landscape of the organization. Secondly, we analyze, the information that we gathered during the reconnaissance phase, and then we obviously do recommendations. And typically, those recommendations consist of specific things related to risk, compliance, governance, people, process, and technology that needs to be addressed, where there's weaknesses and what needs to be done. And what we typically do is we compile what we refer to as a technology roadmap and a non-technology roadmap. And the technology roadmap will indicate prioritized list of items that they need to implement, and the same applies for the non-technology related activities that they need to do. Examples there would be, for instance, to deploy on a technical side things like data leakage prevention, to address some data privacy requirements, and on the non-technical side, something like incident response, to have an incident response process in place to make sure that you're able to respond when something do happen within your environment.
Awesome. I love your minute 30, because that leaves us exactly 2 minutes to wrap up. We do have a question from Anonymous, who I generally don't take, but they've asked which vulnerability scanning and patch management products does Liquid bake into its offering. What I'm taking from that question is that people are interested in how you're going to make this up. And I want to summarize by saying If I was listening and part of the attendees, I would make an appointment to see Ignis and meet the team. There is a change going on in Liquid. It's moving from a place that we were familiar with into Liquid Intelligent Technologies. And it sounds like there are good deals and good services to be part of. So if you're looking at the partner platform and the landscape out there, looking for a partner for the journey, Dion said that he wants to meet 100 customers. Link up on LinkedIn, meet with Dion. If you're looking at the enterprise space or you're looking at the SME space, Craig and Boyd are there. They're available. And if you're looking specifically at a security environment and a security intervention, I think Ignis may be the ninja of security environments. He doesn't look like a ninja, but let me tell you, he knows his stuff. He will do the kata on the bad guys. So from my side, Daniel Robus, I'm going to be polite to everybody and cut off my rant and give it over to Kerry after saying thank you to the team from Liquid for all your prep, for being open and vulnerable and not having any sacred cows and allowing me to probe under the hood of what's going on in the change. Over to you, Kerry.
And thanks again, guys, for attending today. I really hope that you found today's session insightful and that we answered some of your questions. Cheers from TechCentral. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys at the next one.